Food Allergies and Their Effect on the Immune System by Alex Stevenson.
And Mark Macri. There are two classifications of allergies, Class 1 and Class 2. Class 1, which is what we're going to be looking at, are food allergies, and they result from exposure in the gastrointestinal tract, which is usually a result of the allergen being ingested orally. Class 2 affect the respiratory tract. These are inhaled, and there are usually pollens and the like. Reactions between the two classes can often intertwine and cause symptoms in both tracts. Most food allergies are associated with IgE, and healthy non-allergenic individuals, express IgG and IgA. Allergies can also become less severe with age or entirely go away because you build up tolerance as you age. Now, as for methods, all of my sources were articles explaining how each mechanics work for each system, so there aren't really any methods, so I'll just go on to the next slide. Right, so this image from one of the sources shows the primary exposure response, the secondary exposure response, and the process of the different manifestations that you can have. Now on the bottom right, you can see the sites of the different allergic manifestations, such as the skin, respiratory tract, the mouth, the heart, and the gut. The top right, you can see the levels of the different immunoglobulins in the system, namely IgG and IgE. The first image on the top, it shows the primary exposure response, which you can see Th2 working with IL-4 and IL-13 to induce a class switch from IgM to IgE. In the secondary response, right below it, you can see the memory Th2 cells going directly through the allergen and activating the IgE response immediately. In the third and bottom part of the image, it shows you the different pathways. So the first half is IgE dependent, and the second half is IgE independent. So this slide is an example of what can go on in the gut during an allergic reaction. You can see in the first photo the dendritic cell getting the antigen from the allergen, bringing it to a naive T cell. And then the naive T cell activates the Th2 cell, which then causes the type switching from IgM to IgE, and so on. Now this is an example of what causes inflammation in the gut. Here is a chart summarizing the enzymes, compounds, and other things used during this immune response. You can see them classified into enzymes, toxic mediator, cytokine, chemokine, and lipid mediator. You can see stuff I mentioned in the other slides like IL-4 and IL-13 and what they do. You can see some new stuff that I didn't really mention because they're not used so much in food allergies, like histamine and heparin. To summarize, antigens from the allergen are presented to a naive T cell by a dendritic cell. Th2 is then stimulated and activated by IL-4 and IL-13. Th2 then causes an isotype switch, switching IgM to IgE. IgE is then accumulated by the mast cells, and once the allergen antigen decreases inside the cell, Treg cells cause another switch from IgE to the normally present IgG. So, now that we have the general idea out of the way, Stevie's going to go over
Tree nut allergies, IgE specific. So here's an intro for tree nut allergies specifically. There are different types of food allergy reactions, and some have to do with IgE. The ones that are to do with IgE include tree nuts, which is an offshoot of IgA. IgE were originally believed to fight off extracellular parasites by alerting for the help of Th2s. IgE binds to mast cells and releases histamines that trigger the immune response from helper T cells, like homing, which we learned in class. Here are the methods for the papers I'll be reviewing. For the first paper, it's a review article, so there weren't really any methods for that paper. For the second paper I will review, they took a group of 120 people that had either peanut or tree nut allergies, and looked what they were allergic to individually, asked them questions about what they were allergic to. And then for the last article I will be reviewing, they went into a lab to see if anti-IgE could be used to treat people for allergies, as it would suppress the IgE that results from our allergies. So here's a figure from the first paper I will be reviewing. On the left side, we have what would normally happen if your IgE did not recognize any of these foods as foreign. But on the right is if they do and they cause an allergic reaction. So IgE will bind to mast cells if they recognize the foods as foreign, and they will call in Th9 cells that will cause an inflammatory response. This will most likely be in your throat because that's where IgE comes into first contact with these outside foods, and it will cause inflammation in your throat, and it will make it difficult to breathe, causing the severe allergic reactions, especially to tree nuts. Here's a figure from the second article I will be reviewing. The figure shows the amount of allergic reactions each tree nut presents. So of 54 patients tested, by far and away the most was walnut. About half of the people had reactions to walnuts. Next down on the list is kind of a grouping of almonds, pecans, and cashews. And then the next grouping is hazel, pines, pistachio. Obviously walnut here, by far and away the most prevalent that IgE recognizes and kicks in the immune response for. And for the final paper I'll be reviewing, here's a figure of anti-IgE and how it could stop IgE from binding to mast cells to begin the immune response. And if IgE were to work, it would stop the immune system from kicking on, and it would stop allergic reactions from taking place theoretically. It was seen in the lab that IgE was about 50% successful. So there's some ability, it seems like, for IgE to stop the immune response, but not enough, it seems like. For the discussion for the food allergies, there still really are no cures for food allergies other than just growing out of them if it's possible, which for tree nut allergies, they usually are not. And the only way you can go out of them is normally when you're a kid going into being an adult. Other ways is just to avoid the food that you're allergic to, and then treating the symptoms of the throat inflammation, which would be you'd have to decrease the immune response with epinephrine, the immune response, the inflammation, to get the person to breathe again.
Here are our sources.